So what we're now doing is we're going to find your story, the story that's lurking inside you, that's made you click on this video. And the way we're going to do this is a brain dump, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, where basically we are going to take every little thought that's in your head, even if it's a shopping list or a to-do list or whatever it is, and we're going to write it out. I use them now because the rest of it was too messy. These post-it stickers have got enough room to put a few things in, and just put it all out there so that your head is empty of all this clutter. The idea being that your head is then clear to focus on your story. And the other thing you must do is take your phone and put it on Do Not Disturb. And if you have to pick up the children or something like that later on, set an alarm and allow that as an exception to Do Not Disturb. So you know that you won't get pings and dings of notifications, but you will get that important alarm saying don't leave your children at the gate. Right. So when I started brain dumping everything that was in my head, this is the sort of mess I ended up with. And so the important thing is anything that isn't to do with your book, take it to one side and just put it in your diary or somewhere so it's out of your head, but it's not on the table in front of you. And then what you want to do is look at your various ideas and try to coalesce them into a story. And at this stage, I think we're just looking for a beginning, a middle and an end. I think there are two things here which will help you. One is, of course, if you download my printable, the parameters, which deals with the story, general parameters and illustrations, which we'll come to in the next video. And the other is to answer all of these questions in this order. And you'll find that considering your parameters and the answers to these questions, they basically interact together, and you need to think about both of them at the same time. So the first thing for the beginning of your story, you want to think about who is your story aimed at and who is it about. So for me, let me give you an example from my story. My story was always about my great niece Lottie, who was 3 going on 4 at the time I wrote it, and she lives in Australia. The other thing about Lottie is she loves crocodiles. So for me, that gave me a second character who was going to be the crocodile. It also told me that I knew where the story was set, and this was going to be Australia. And that answer also dictated what my scenery was going to look like and what sort of animals I was going to put in my story. I was going to put particularly Australian animals. Now, and when, so you could start your story historically, or it could be present day, or it could be future. For me, it was present day. If you think about it, you know this sort of old fairy tales that we have. Once upon a time, so when, in a land far, far away, where there lived who. So whether you put the who in front of the when and the where, or the when and the where in front of the who, if that makes sense, this is the beginning of your story, and you have to fill in your own blanks as to who you're dealing with, where they are, and when it takes place. Now, I would suggest that the next thing you look at is not the middle, unless you have specific answers already in your mind, but focus on this bit here at the end, which is where or how does this story end. Now, why am I saying focus on this now? That is because what we were about to do is take a journey through your imagination and creativity. And if you're travelling anywhere, as you know, if you jump in a taxi, the first thing the driver's going to ask you is, where are you going? If you don't know where you're going, how on earth are you going to get there? So I think this is a really important consideration, and unless you know your whole story all the way through immediately, I would consider this next. So for me, I don't know quite why, I think it's probably because I really love dragons. I wanted Lottie's crocodile to turn into a dragon, and for the last picture in the book to be Lottie soaring up into the sky on the dragon's back. So that resolution to my story immediately begged the question, how does a crocodile turn into a dragon? So at the beginning of the story, the crocodile is being teased by the other crocodiles in the swamp. And the reason he's being teased is because he has 2 lumps on his back. And those lumps will, of course, ultimately end up transforming into wings, where he will realise that he's not a crocodile after all, he's a dragon. So that also gives me something I need to add here, which is that the crocodile has bumps on his back which turn into wings. So this not only impacts on my storyline, this also impacts on my illustrations, because I have to remember from the very beginning until he transforms that the little crocodile's got to have lumps on his back. I think these are the 2 most important parts to consider first of all, if you haven't worked out what happens in the middle from the beginning. And you don't need to worry too much about this, because it will come to you. Once you know who you are, where you are, and something about you, you will work out how to get to wherever you've decided you're going to go. Now for me, it was very easy because Lottie is my great niece, so I know about her, I know what she likes, I know what she looks like. But if your child or animal that your story is based on is hypothetical, why not just write yourself a little biography of that protagonist so that you can keep it constant in your mind, so that you don't sort of drift off piste, as it were, when you make your way to your final denouement. What I think would be really useful to consider in any event, wherever you are on this path, is why are you writing this story? I don't mean you personally, I mean what is your mission? What's your message? What's your theme? So for me, Lottie, at nearly 4 years old, was about to start school. So I wanted to write her a story to give her confidence so that she was in a book. I wanted her to have a story that was about friendship, and I wanted her to have a story where she was empowered to help the little crocodile, and then I wanted her soaring off in this very dramatic fashion at the end on the dragon's back. Your reason for writing your book will be different to mine, but have a think about what it is you want to say in your book, and then give consideration to the what and how you're going to get to your what happens at the end. Now, when you get to this stage, this is where you might find it useful to look at all the various ideas you've pulled out of your head. Some of them will belong to this story and some of them will belong to a different story entirely, but think of them as pieces of a jigsaw to see if you can fit them in. So for me, what I was trying to solve was, I know that Lottie and the crocodile will become friends, so I need to show that process. And what I did for this was look at the photographs which Lottie's mum had sent me recently about the different things that children do together. And I had here, they were going to the park, to the swings, they were going to the beach. This is where Lottie was sitting at a table just having a drink, I think with her brother, but it turned out she was having a drink in my story with the crocodile. And then I had this lovely picture here, which was Lottie hugging her brother, and I thought I can turn that into Lottie hugging the crocodile. And my little snatch of text which I wanted to put in here was, "I'm so glad you're my friend," they both said. So that solved my problem of how I was going to fill this, it was how do they become friends, that I put in here. And then I was still trying to solve the how does a crocodile turn into a dragon. So if you were writing my story and you had this information and you knew where you wanted to take them, then, and you knew what the message or themes were for your book, then just write out in simple question form what it is you're trying to resolve, and then just sleep on it. Or alternatively, just do something really boring like, I don't know, matching up socks or folding the linen, and your subconscious will be working on it the whole time. This is what brilliant people like Einstein used to do when they were trying to solve a problem, so there is actually some science behind it. But your subconscious, unbeknown to you, does actually work the whole time, even when you're asleep. So if you're really clear about what the question is you're trying to solve, you will hopefully wake up in the morning or just have an epiphany while you're searching for that odd sock, where you'll think, oh, hang on, I know how I can do this. And for me, it was, I was going to have the crocodile hibernate, and then when he was hibernating, rather like a caterpillar in a chrysalis, he would turn into a dragon when he came out. So once you've got your complete story, I think it's then a very useful exercise to just look at the outline of your story and think to yourself, does this have highs and lows? Is it a flat walk in the park, or is it a roller coaster where it has sort of exciting things happen? Have a look at what you consider each event to be. It doesn't have to be necessarily at the moment split out into pages. Just say to yourself, what's the emotion here? What's the emotion there? And just think, does it have a different emotional journey? So, for example, for my book, at the beginning, the crocodile is very sad. He's crying because he's being teased. He then meets Lottie and they get to know each other, and they gradually get to a stage where they both give each other a big hug and say, I'm so pleased you're my friend. So that's lovely and friendly. And then she finds him a nice warm cave to go and hibernate in. She then has to wait, and she gets very fed up waiting for him. So that's frustration. And then when he does come out, very shockingly, he's no longer a crocodile, he's a dragon. So that's a real shock. And then she looks at him, recognizes that it's still her friend, and then ends on a moment, and it ends on a moment of joy where they go soaring up into the sky together. So when you think you've got the skeleton of your story and you've considered your parameters, this is the time when you start storyboarding. And what do I mean by that? I mean, this is a storyboard template which I have on my Fourth Wall site, which I created for you. You don't have to use this, you could just use a piece of paper and draw some squares for yourself, but I did it like this because I got myself very confused about pages, etc. And how many pages, and I just found this helpful. And the reason it's helpful is because when your book is published, it will have a title page at the front, and then it will have a copyright notice here, and then it will have a dedication page there, which is 1, 2, 3 pages, which do get counted into your page count. Then you start your story either here, I guess, or there on page 4 or 5. You have your middle pages, obviously you can photocopy that for more. And then at the end, KDP will add this extra page here, which simply says published by Amazon and a barcode, and the page before it is a blank. Now, I just at this stage want to add something because I got very confused about this. Just to be completely clear, this is a leaf, as in turn over leaf. This is a page, and this is a page, and that is a page, and so on. So do not get confused and think that is a page. It's not. That is one page and another page, and that's a leaf. Now you may have got that and think, what's she going on about? But that just completely foxed me and had me counting through and through. But if you use the storyboards I've given you I have on the website, you will find it's much easier to keep count. And what you can do, I've labelled to here with numbers. You can number all the way through, and then when you get to the average for a child's book is 32 pages. When you get to 32, you can draw a red line, or you can just keep going however long you want to. But you will be aware how many pages you've filled and how many you need to fill. Now, full disclosure here, one of my major parameters when I was making the book for Lottie was that I literally had only about 3 weeks to do it because I wanted to get it to her in time for her birthday. So when I was roughing out my ideas for illustrations, instead of I didn't bother with a storyboard at all. I just did rough illustrations, very rough illustrations. I don't know if you can even see them, like this. And I was literally sort of shuffling papers thinking, well, which one goes where? Because of course that's one illustration, but it goes over 2 pages. But I did make little notes of faces and what to do and what not to do. And for example, when the dragon appears out of the cave, I've made a little note to myself here saying, don't make scary, because it was a bit of a frightening face for a children's storybook. And then here at the end, this is a better version of the same event. Here's where she recognises her friend, and I've made notes on the bottom. And here is where they're soaring up into the sky. But actually what I've done as an exercise is to sketch out all of my text and drawings in one of the storyboards I've made, and I have to say it would have made my life so much easier. For a variety of reasons. So firstly, because it would have been clear which page I was on, and if I go through all my different illustrations, where I was in the book, and I would know that once I got to here, I'd got the minimum of 24 pages, so the rest was just extra, and I could cross out any blank pages, and by the time I'd finished, I would know I was at 31 pages, which is pretty close to the average of 32 for children's books. So that would have made that part of it very much easier. But also, when you just rough out where you're going to put your diagrams and the bit of text you're going to put with them, it would have made it much clearer for me where I needed to be careful that I didn't get faces and things like that in the gutter, which is this central fold of the book here. And this drawing of the beach, or painting of the beach as it subsequently became, I think looking at it here, which is how it appears in the book, I would probably have pitched it more on the left-hand side and had the writing on the right-hand side. I think it would have looked better. What else can I tell you I would have changed? So this particular part where Lottie is waiting for the crocodile to come out of the cave, I probably would have preferred, if I'd thought about it, to put the third Lottie more spread out on this page rather than scrunching her up here. And then what I might have been able to do is put some of the words here and some of the words down here or something else. But anyway, just to lay it out slightly differently, or maybe just have fewer words. Just on the whole, using these storyboards just made me feel much more in control, so that I knew what I was doing and I had a real idea of what the book was going to look like. So my takeaways from this part of my storybook making, and I guess therefore my advice to you would be, don't do it in a rush. Take your time over the decisions that you make. I would definitely, if I were doing it again, I would definitely use storyboards, because I think they give you much more of a sense of what your book and what your pictures and text on the page will look like. And then what I would also suggest is take your time over the words that you use. So my outline of my story actually amounted to no more than 55 words. And we're going to come to this in the next video, which is about illustrations. But for children's storybooks, we're really talking show, don't tell. So it's all about the illustrations, and the words just sort of little nudges to keep you heading in the right direction. So as you only have very few words in a children's storybook, make them count. So things to consider are repetition, which can be a good thing, alliteration, rhythm, rhyme, and jokes. You know, have funny scenarios. Children love to laugh, don't we all? And of course, don't forget cliffhangers. Cliffhangers. Okay, that was a bit melodramatic, but let me demonstrate what I mean. So Lottie is here waiting and waiting and waiting for Dylan to come out, and she finally says in an exasperated voice, "Dylan, are you ever coming out?" And he says, "Yes, I am, but Lottie, It turns out I'm not a crocodile after all. Da, da, da. I'm a dragon! And that is a cliffhanger, because you've set up a scenario here where we're waiting for something to happen, we're waiting for Dylan to come out, and the reveal is on the next page. So it's literally a page turner. You can work out your own cliffhangers for your own stories, just adds a little bit of excitement. So that's it for this video. Join me in the next. The link is up here, or don't forget to subscribe and then it will be sent to you automatically. And the next video will be on illustration, which I think is going to be a zinger. And I will see you in the next one. Oh, found that sock.